And one more time, it's the Horror Guys.
Live coming from Horror Guy Studios.
Well, it's live right now. It won't be in time when anybody's listening to this.
We're live. Yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're going to talk about some horror movies, aren't we?
What do we got? How many we got?
We got 4 horror movies.
And a short.
And a short.
And a couple of bonus movies. We got all kinds of stuff.
We got some old and we got some new. And yeah, we got a mix.
Yeah.
They were all pretty good, though.
Yep. As always, the show is brought to you by the Horror Guys series of books. Go over to horrorguysshop.com and pick up one today. We've completely renovated the entire online site. You can get ebooks. You can get paperbacks from 2 different places. Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is, but some people really hate Amazon. Have you heard that?
I have heard that.
Well, if you don't like Amazon, you can also get our paperbacks through Lulu, a competitor to Amazon.
Uh-huh.
So you stick it to the man.
Bypass on Amazon.
Or buy it
Or
in
just
ebook
buy it from Amazon.
Yeah, whatever.
Whichever you prefer.
Amazon does have Prime, which is nice. You get it quicker that way.
Yeah.
Free shipping.
Uh-huh.
Well, free in quotation marks.
Yeah, with a subscription.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And along with those books, the 17th issue of Horror Bulletin Monthly has just come out. You can pick that up at the same place, horrorguys.com/books, or horrorguys.com and choose the monthly at the top of the menus, or go over to horrorguysshop.com and pick one up there, or go to any of the usual places. Mm-hmm. Issue 17 has a whole month of reviews in it, a bunch of good stuff. And some bad stuff, because they're reviews. We get everything.
We don't like everything, and we tell you about it.
We don't.
So you don't have to watch
We
them.
don't fake gush over movies. If it stinks, we'll say so. And yeah, I'm not going to pick on Skinamarink one more time, am I?
Don't pick on it.
I'm still traumatized like 2 months later.
A lot of people writing about Skinamarink and liking it, though. So, yeah.
I think they're trolling us. I think the millions of people that love that movie are just trolling us.
Every single one of us, one of them are trolling us. Okay.
Well, anyway, that Skinamarink, the worst movie ever made, probably, is now available on Shudder. We saw an early version of it, but
so you can watch it and decide for yourself.
Anybody can watch it right now. We recommend that you don't, but if you want to test us,
but maybe you should, so you can decide, and then you'll know.
I challenge anybody to sit through that without playing on their phone through half of it.
We certainly did.
All right. Well, anyway, this week we saw some other movies. What did we see?
We saw a sort of Christmas movie, The Apology.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And the original Friday the 13th, where it all began. And the ridiculous Tusk. And the spanking new There's Something Wrong with the Children.
Yes. And we mentioned at the very end of last week's podcast that if you email us, email at horrorguys.com and say, I'd like a copy of There's Something Wrong with the Children, we have promo copies to give away. Still got a few of those. That's what happens when we put the announcement at the very end of the show. But yeah, we do have a giveaway on There's Something Wrong with the Children, and we'll review that one last, so we won't be spoiling it for anybody. Mm-hmm. Over on horrorbulletin.com, our weekly newsletter, we have Beast of the Yellow Night from 1971. You saw that.
I saw that. Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I didn't think it was very good.
It was kind of awful.
Yeah.
It was Southeast Asia, made in, I think, Philippines or maybe Malaysia, one of those Southeast Asia places. And it was essentially a werewolf movie, kinda.
Sorta.
Sorta.
It was a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was kind of poorly edited, and the beast was kind of bad, and it was all around. Yeah. Almost felt like something was lost in translation at times, too.
But I don't think it was. I think if we understood it, it just was
not
bad.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can check out our review.
Yep. Then that was 1971, low budget, Asian movies. It's like in the same league with the karate movies from that time period, probably. Kind of bad, but kind of fun to watch.
Yeah.
And then there was Mondo Cane from 1962. I've always heard of this. It's a super mega classic. Mondo Cane. It will turn your stomach.
And at the time, it was very controversial and banned at a lot of places and everything. It's purely documentary. It's not fiction, and it hops all over the globe.
It's
showing
just one weird
people
thing
doing
after
stuff.
another, yeah.
And sometimes it's weird things and weird rituals and real weird cultures, but it shows a tribe, slaughtering pigs, for example. It's very graphic on animal deaths. At one point, there's some people that are self-flagellating, cutting their legs in a religious ceremony. So there's real blood.
This is not pseudo-fake in the way Cannibal Holocaust was.
It's
a couple
real.
animals were killed in that, but for the most part, most of that was fake. This was all real stuff.
Yeah.
But it's more of a documentary, so they kind of can get away with it.
But it hops all over the world and shows an advanced society, a modern city, well, modern for 1962, people doing things there, and then comparing it to a simple tribe, and it was kind of interesting because they'd hop around. It's like, oh, people are kind of people all over. They're all
People are weird.
The fundamentals are people are weird.
Yeah. Anyway, that was Mondo Cane from 62. You can read the whole thing at horrorbulletin.com. It's already been posted. It's there and available for you right now. And going back in time, 4 years ago, every week we talk about what happened 4 years ago, time machine time, on episode number 7. We'd only been at this for less than 2 months at that point. We looked at the movie Ravenous from 1999.
I love Ravenous.
It's a yummy, yummy cannibal movie.
We have it on a DVD down on the shelf, in fact. And I've seen it multiple times.
And we also watched Ravenous from 2017, also called Les Affame, a French movie.
Not the same Ravenous.
Not the same thing at all. It's a French zombie movie, which I don't remember too much about it at this point, but I remember we liked it quite a bit.
It was okay, yeah.
It was weird. Anyway, you can listen to that at horrorguys.com/HG007. Horror Guys 007. All right, so let's get on with some of these movies. We had a whole bunch of things this time, and the first one we are going to talk about is The Apology from 2022.
I'm sorry.
Written and directed by Alison Locke, stars Anna Gunn, everybody's favorite character from Breaking Bad. Linus Roach, who's been in lots of things, and Janine Garofalo, who I haven't seen work in decades.
But she was good in this.
Yeah, it was a small character.
And it was pretty much just them.
And just them, nobody else. Hour and 31 minutes, trailer in the show notes. This was on Shudder. Spoiler free. This was some very fine work done by only 3 actors. A lot of the horror comes from it being an awful series of events that are totally realistic. Kind of painful to watch, but in a fun way.
In a fun way? I don't know about
well, it's
fun.
For us. It wasn't so much fun for them.
But it was good. No, these poor people. Yeah. Well, it's a cold and snowy evening out in the woods. Darlene and Gretchen argue about cake for breakfast, and there's parties and there's plans coming up. So clearly it's the holiday season. It's Darlene's first time hosting Christmas in 20 years. And it's also the 20th anniversary of Sally's disappearance. And we gradually find out who Sally is, or was. Well, Gretchen goes home to her house right across the street. Now, it's more of I think it was a little
isolated cul-de-sac kind of place.
Yeah, off a ways from the street. It wasn't like immediately, but, a neighbor. Well, Darlene watches a video interview about Sally's disappearance, and it's clear she's not at all over it yet. Darlene pours a drink, and credits roll. Well, there's a knock at the door. It's Darlene's brother-in-law, Jack. He says his car ran off the road a mile down the road, and his visit was supposed to be a surprise. It's been 19 years since they've seen each other. He says he has a lot to make up for. She offers to let him spend the night and find a motel tomorrow. They talk about old times, and it already starts getting weird and uncomfortable. Apparently, Jack was cheating on Darlene's sister, Julie, with Darlene.
He was married to Julie and had an affair with Darlene.
Yeah, so the two of them have a sexual history, but he bailed on all of them. Well, the power goes off briefly because they're having a thundersnow. Jack asks what Darlene needs to do to feel whole again after the whole thing with Sally. But she says nothing, really. It's been 20 years. She's just dealing with it as best she can.
Which is not very well.
Yeah, and at the very least, she would want to know every single detail about what happened. And she says she should have been there for Sally, but she was drunk at the time. She's a recovering alcoholic, and she's struggling with that recently. And somewhere along the line, we learn that Sally is actually her daughter. Vanished without a trace.
20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, Jack says he has to tell her something. And then he starts putting all the knives away in the kitchen. And we're thinking, this isn't going to be good news, or what he's going to share here. And Darlene figures out, your car didn't break down, did it? Nobody knows you're here. Well, he wants to sit down and talk. And he brought zip ties in case she's uncooperative and doesn't want to sit still and listen to him. But you deserve to know the truth, he says. He insists.
That's probably where we should stop.
That's where we should stop.
We're about to hear the truth.
Yeah. And what is the truth?
It's an uncomfortable. You can't handle the truth.
It gets. Yeah, this was a truly uncomfortable movie. Yeah, but so good. Yeah.
It's a messed up situation, but it all seems believable. The acting is good, and everyone's motives are clear. It all unfolds naturally, and although there aren't a lot of surprises, it's never quite clear how it's going to end. About the time of Jack... okay, yeah.
Yeah, you can't mention that.
Yeah,
that's part of
there's some motivational...
spoilery.
There's some questionable motivations about this whole confession deal. Mm-hmm. And we thought there was going to be a big twist.
So there was some speculation on what exactly was going to be told and revealed and so forth. And,
well, there's only 3 characters, and all the action takes place inside a house. So it had to have been a fairly low-budget film, but it all looks good, and it's all very well done.
Yeah, it was.
I think the acting was good all the way around.
Yeah, sure was.
All right, now for some Academy Award-winning, wonderful, super-duper acting, we got Friday the 13th from 1980.
This is where it all began.
Okay, maybe it's not that good.
I had chills watching it again.
Oh, my.
Well, I saw it when it came out, and this is actually only the second time I've seen it all the way through.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces and clips all over the place, and but yeah, this was the second time I'd seen it.
Well, I think there's like 12 of these. I've lost count, and I haven't looked it up recently. I know I've seen probably the first 4 or 5. I lost interest after a while. They all started being the same.
More than half of them. I'm sure
I've seen Jason in Space and Jason in New York City, but the camping ones just got old.
They all kind of run together a bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've seen at least 8 or 9 of them.
Well, I got news for you.
We're going to see them all.
Yeah, we are eventually. We've got through all of Halloween last year. This is going to be the Friday the 13th year.
Well, spoiler-free, in case you don't know what's going on.
Directed by Sean Cunningham.
Yeah, we need to say that.
Written by Victor Miller and Ron Kurtz. Stars Betsy Palmer, Adrienne King, Janine Taylor, and Robbie Morgan. Hour and 36 minutes. And if you never heard of this thing, there's a trailer in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. This little phenomena called, and this was Kevin Bacon's big role too.
Not his first role, but his first big movie.
Uh-huh. Well, it seems strange revisiting the classic where it all began after all these years. Both horror guys saw this when it came out, and at least once or twice since then, but it's been a while. It still holds up. The pacing is good. The direction is skillful. The acting is okay, and character development is a little weak, but it's forgivable. It's kind of an institution.
Well, there are characters.
There are characters.
There's the good girl, and the jock, and the stoner, and the guy in the wheelchair,
and the slut. And there are lots of characters, so
Yeah.
there's lots of people to get killed off.
Yeah. All right, well, we begin at Camp Crystal Lake in 1958. There's a point-of-view shot of someone walking through a cabin full of sleeping people. A couple of the counselors sneak out to the barn and start kissing. We see the POV camera going upstairs to the barn loft where the couple is now having sex. The teens are both brutally murdered. Credits roll.
And so it begins.
And the credits come out Friday the 13th in these big letters, and Kevin looks, is this 3D?
I did have
Remember that
look
logo?
To it. Yeah,
it had sort of a 3D looking text logo to it. It wasn't in 3D, but it kind of looked that way.
Yeah.
In the present, Annie, carrying her backpack, walks into the town of Crystal Lake looking for the camp. She goes into a diner and asks. A man offers to drive her there. Ralph, the Harbinger, says the place has a death curse and that she's never coming back. He must welcome everybody in town like that, you think?
He knows things. He rides bike and he knows things.
He ain't wrong. Yeah. Well, the other people in the diner ask if they're reopening the camp, and Annie says they are.
Yeah,
no one seems real supportive.
It's pretty notorious.
Well, the driver asks Annie if she knows what happened up there, and he fills her in. Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed. 2 kids were murdered in 1958, and another one drowned in 57. There have been fires up there since. The new owner, Steve Christie, has spent a fortune getting the place ready to reopen, and the truck driver eventually drops her off near the camp.
Yeah, and it's not the exact camp that he's reopening. It's next to it. It's right on the lake.
Yeah, there's next to the old camp.
Yeah.
So Marcy, Jack, and Ned arrive at the camp as well. Alice is already there, and the new boss, Steve, puts them all to work right away. Someone we don't see picks up Annie and drives her the rest of the way to camp. Except they drive right past the camp entrance and keep on going. Annie jumps out of the car to escape and runs through the woods with the killer in pursuit. Annie winds up dead in the woods with her throat cut. Well, there's one.
There's one.
It was looking like she was going to be the main character, too.
Psych.
Nope. All the counselors decide to go swimming, and Ned drowns. Oh, no, it's just a ruse to get mouth-to-mouth from one of the girls. That's a good trick.
That Ned, he's just such a kidder.
Annie finds a snake in her cabin, and the group practically destroys the cabin in the hunt for the thing. They finally kill it with a machete.
Handy.
A what? A machete.
Handy having a machete laying around, isn't it?
Officer Dorf, a motorcycle cop, comes by to warn them about Crazy Ralph, who's on a bender. That's the guy we saw in town earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Alice soon finds Ralph hiding in the pantry, and he goes on about the curse again. God sent me. I got to warn you. You're doomed to stay.
Doomed, I say.
Oh, my. Sounds like a pirate, don't he?
Yeah, a little bit.
Later, Jack and Marcy start making out, and Ned looks on with jealousy as he goes off to do his own thing. It starts storming, so Jack and Marcy go into a cabin to continue what they were doing. They don't see Ned's bloody body on the upper bunk. Jack dies from an arrow through the throat, and Marcy gets the axe. Uh-oh. I've already lost track. I think that's 4.
So many handy weapons laying around.
Brenda, Bill, and Annie, meanwhile, start to play Strip Monopoly. Yeah, that sounds exciting, but you know how slow that would be?
It's very slow. It is.
Steve is stuck in town at the diner talking to Sandy, the waitress there. He finally leaves and drives back to camp. He breaks down, and Sergeant Tierney gives him a ride. Tierney complains about the higher crime rate when it's Friday the 13th or the full moon, which I guess is probably a statistical truth. Something to that, isn't there?
Not really.
No?
It's hooey.
Well, Tierney gets an emergency call and lets Steve out to walk the rest of the way. Brenda remembers she left her cabin windows open and runs out into the rain without any clothes. She narrowly avoids being killed in the shower house, but eventually makes it back to her cabin. She hears someone crying, "Help me," and goes outside to search the woods in the storm. She winds up on the archery range and becomes an easy target.
And that sounded like a child's voice, too.
Help me.
Help me.
Or a fly.
Yeah.
Annie and Bill hear Brenda scream, and they both go to check it out. They find a bloody axe, but no body. They break into the office to call the police, but the phones are out. We see that the lines have been cut.
Uh-huh.
Steve finally arrives at the campground sign, and he sees someone there that he knows. Someone who kills him.
And we don't get to see who it is yet.
Clearly, this is not a deformed guy in a mask. Otherwise, people would start... I mean, several people have reacted like they know this person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not what we think.
Maybe.
Well, the power goes off at the camp, and Bill lights a lantern. He goes to check on the generator while Alice sleeps on the couch. She wakes up and eventually goes looking for Bill, and she finds him stuck to the generator building's door with more arrows. This killer's quite the archer.
Yep, they are.
Alice screams and runs through the woods. She goes into a cabin and barricades the door. And we noticed very quickly that she piles a whole bunch of stuff in front of the door that opens the other way.
Yeah, it opens outward.
The door opens outwards, and yeah.
But she was panicked, so yeah.
She looks out the window and sees Steve's car drive up. She runs outside and finds that it's not Steve, it's Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of Steve's family. Alice tells her all about what happened, but Mrs. Voorhees says she'll take care of everything.
And you start feeling good at this point, thinking, there's help. Help has arrived. This calm, older woman who seems strong and straightforward.
It's been 43 years. I don't think most people know this twist. The two of them go back in the cabin and find Brenda's body. What monster could have done this? The woman asks. Steve should never have opened this place after all that trouble. Then she talks about how the young boy Jason drowned in 1957 because the counselors were making love elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We learn that Mrs. Voorhees was Jason's mother, and today is his birthday. She admits that she killed everyone to make them pay for what happened to little Jason.
Yeah, she's a little wacky.
Speaking of wacky, Alice whacks the crazy woman and runs out, stumbling across several more bodies on the way.
And might I just point out, this is the first of many times where she gets the upper hand against Mrs. Voorhees and runs. And, of course, Mrs. Voorhees gets up and pursues the chase again.
Push her down.
This is a trope.
Hit her in the face.
This
knock
is
her
a trope
down.
in horror movies a lot of times, but this one was really blatant about it. I think there were 3 distinct chances where she could have just kept whacking Mrs. Voorhees, but no, she runs away.
Always stay and finish the job.
Make sure they're staying down.
We then see just how crazy Mrs.
Or
Voorhees...
at least, stand there and watch them. And if they get up again, whack them. You don't have to.
Somebody like Michael Myers that gets up over and over and over. That can be an all-night
while
job.
They're down. But you could stand there. You're safe. Baseball bat at the ready. Yeah. But no, run.
Well, Mrs. Voorhees starts talking to herself using his voice, Jason's voice. Let's go get her, Mommy.
Mm-hmm.
Not once, not twice, but 3 times does Alice knock the woman out and run away without finishing her off. There is more running, hunting, and chasing.
Kill her, Mommy, kill her.
Alice smacks the lunatic woman with a frying pan and runs out to the boat docks. Mrs. Voorhees catches up again, and there's another fight, but this time Alice grabs a machete and hacks the woman's head right off.
That took care of it.
In shock, Alice climbs into a canoe and goes off into the lake to calm down. She wakes up in the morning. Half-rotted Jason jumps up and grabs her. Ah! No, she wakes up in the hospital and talks to the police. Just a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not. She asks if Jason is dead, too. Sergeant Tierney says that didn't really happen, so he doesn't believe much of her story. Then he's still there, Alice says.
So there could be a sequel then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, they hacked the old woman's head off. How could they come up with a sequel for that?
How could they come back? Yeah.
Well, the character Jack was one of Kevin Bacon's earliest major film appearances. We get the iconic sound just a minute or 2 into the story, so it wastes no time. It's not quite the Halloween theme, but it's certainly memorable.
It's recognizable.
There's not really much character development here, but at least we can tell all the characters apart before they die. The end, of course, reveals the killer to be Mrs. Voorhees. She killed all the counselors in 58 and was probably the one who started the fires that were mentioned. The name Jason doesn't even come up until at the very end of the film with her explanation, and Jason being the killer only comes in the sequels. Jason didn't kill anybody yet.
Nope.
I like the pacing here. It never slows down for too much chit-chat, and people start dying right away. It's no wonder they barely waited a year to make one sequel. That first sequel, this was 1980. Part 2 came out in 81.
Boom. Made money. Let's make some more.
They made a lot of sequels very fast.
Yeah.
Some of them are not great.
And some of them are, well, like we said, they kind of run together in the midst. I think around 10, Jason X, I think, started getting more interesting. But, yeah, the ones from 4 to 8 or so just kind of run together. 4 to 8 or 9, they're all in a camp. And,
it's another Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah.
Then we watched a short film also this week, 2023, The Giver Taker. Ooh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, it was neat.
Directed by Paul Gandersman, written by Peter S. Hall, stars Sarah Nell Kessler, Laura Jessica Perrin, and Heather Katie Ward. Wouldn't let you be in this one if you didn't have 3 names. 10 minutes, 22 seconds, and you can watch this one on YouTube. What happens?
Well, a woman prepares a very special offering and reads a spell from her book. And then she opens a mystical doorway to a dark place. She wants revenge on those who have caused her pain. Well, Heather and Becca, the 2 bad girls she wants to revenge on, come in. Main girl says that the dark hole in the wall is like a wishing well, a real one, and she demonstrates how it works. You need to make offerings to the giver-taker, and he will grant you wishes. But what could go wrong?
Wishes? Wishes? Whatever goes wrong with wishes never go wrong.
We find out what goes wrong. Sometimes it's not good to hear the truth, and also be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for. I mean,
and how you wish.
How often do we hear that one?
Yeah, this one is really well acted, well written, with good pacing, good special effects and music, and it looks good with a simple, self-contained story that tells us everything we need to know.
Yeah, which takes us
was
to
a winner.
Oh yeah, very good. Yeah. 2014, Tusk, directed and written by Kevin Smith. Stars Justin Long, Michael Parks, Genesis Rodriguez, and Haley Joel Osment. Hour and 42 minutes. And looking at the movie poster, for years I saw this and thought Daniel Radcliffe was in it. That just sort of looks like him in the front.
That's Justin
Kind
Long.
of does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Well,
And he's not a vampire. Those are walrus tusks on the poster.
boy, that'd be like the world's worst vampire if he looked like that.
Uh-huh.
Spoiler free. Full of absurdity and craziness and loads of body horror, this is a fun watch. The cast, direction, and special effects are all top notch. It's a good one.
It is.
You had seen this before, hadn't you?
I had.
I had not.
Yeah, this was my second view on that, and I really liked it.
This is my first Tusk. What happened?
Well, Wallace and Teddy do a podcast. They talk about a video where a guy cuts his own leg off. Well, Wallace is going to Canada to interview the Kill Bill Kid for next week's show. And the show is called The Nazi Party. Like Nazi.
And he explains it later that the whole point of the show is he goes out and talks to people that the other guy does not see.
Yeah, but he has to explain it constantly because he says, this is the Nazi Party.
you might misunderstand that if you heard it.
Yeah. Well, as Wallace crosses the border to Canada, he gets a lesson about what it means to be Canadian. And when he gets to the Kill Bill Kid's house, there's a funeral going on because the guy has died. Bad timing.
Somebody killed Bill.
Whoops. Well, he goes to a bar, reads a flyer about an old man with weird stories to tell. Thinks maybe this trip wasn't a total waste of time. Wallace goes there to interview the guy, whose name is Howard Howe. Wallace drives several hours out into the country, comes to a huge house. He meets up with wheelchair-bound Howard, who has a very nice place full of interesting stuff. And Howard says he has had many adventures, but he has no idea what a podcaster is. Wallace says that Howard's tea is exceptional as they're talking, and just the stories that Howard's just rattling off is just unbelievable as he's having tea. And Howard talks about meeting Ernest Hemingway during D-Day, among other things. And they talk about the various artifacts on Howard's wall. One of them is the penis bone of a walrus. And Howard tells the story of how he met a walrus when he was lost at sea during the war. He called the walrus Mr. Tusk. Howard lived with Mr. Tusk for 6 months, and they had a beautiful friendship. Wallace passes out because the tea was drugged. Howard says, "It'll be all right, Mr. Tusk."
And just from what we've heard about Mr. Tusk, there's something weird going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They had a beautiful relationship, him and that walrus.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Well, we flash back to Wallace having sex with Allie, his girlfriend. She thinks Wallace is making fun of the Kill Bill Kid, and that's too exploitive. Well, she says Wallace has changed since they've started doing the podcast, and it's a huge success. They're making big bucks on it with the merchandising and followings and everything, but Wallace just makes light of it. Well, back to the present, Wallace wakes up in a wheelchair as Howard polishes the penis bone.
The walruses.
The walrus penis bone, yes. But, he's, stroking it, as he's sitting there talking. So, the symbolism is not lost. Howard says that Wallace was bitten by a brown recluse spider. He says a doctor came and gave Wallace a spinal injection, which is why Wallace can't move much. The doctor also removed one of Wallace's legs and took all the phones away.
What?
Yeah.
What?
He's just BSing him because Wallace is drugged out and half asleep yet, and he's just spewing off this. Well, it's really obvious that Howard is lying about the whole thing. Hours pass, and Wallace says he can't move his arms. Howard says that's probably just the morphine at work. Wallace thinks that Howard is lying, and then Howard gets out of his wheelchair and smacks him on the face. He wasn't even wheelchair bound. Howard says that he's been constructing a walrus suit that he plans to put on Wallace, and Wallace must act the part.
What?
Wallace the walrus, yeah. Well, we cut to Allie, who complains about Wallace. She hates him, but she hates herself more for letting him do things to her. And she knows that he cheats on her. We see that he's telling all this to Teddy.
She's telling all this.
She's telling all this to Teddy just before they sleep together. What? Yeah.
He cheats on me as I cheat on you.
Complaining about him cheating as she cheats, yeah. We then flash back to Wallace talking about cheating to Teddy, who doesn't approve of cheating. And he's cheating on Wallace. So they're a bunch of cheaters. Wallace wakes up and hears his phone ringing. He calls Allie back, but she has her phone on silent mode. He leaves a message for her on voicemail, and Teddy's too. I don't want to die in Canada.
Who does?
Yeah.
Can you think of a worse place to die? Canada's way up there.
Oh, Canada's nice. They're all nice people.
They're weird people, as this movie shows.
Howard certainly is. Yeah. Howard comes and states, "Your life as you know it is over. You will be a walrus or you'll be nothing at all." In the morning, the couple get Wallace's messages. Meanwhile, we see Howard telling another story of his childhood as he stitches up Wallace, and it's a bloody mess. He's taken Wallace's other leg and stitched his arms to his sides. Wallace is looking a bit more like a walrus now. Allie and Teddy go to Canada and start following Wallace's footsteps, trying to find him. They team up with Guy Lapointe, a detective in search of a serial killer named Howard Howe. Aha! He's killed 23 people so far. He's found many bodies that look like a crucified T-Rex. And the mouth and teeth have been disturbed. And we get a flashback to when Lapointe actually met Howard.
And Lapointe is, of course, Johnny Depp doing the world's weirdest Canadian-French accent. Mm-hmm. He's a very strange character.
And their conversation is Howard even being weirder than he was before. Yeah. Well, Wallace wakes up, and he is a walrus now, in a zoo-like enclosure with tusks and all. He soon learns that he's not Howard's first attempt at this. There's another walrus body at the bottom of his pool.
Rotting and decomposing.
Yeah. And a bit later, Howard feeds Wallace a raw mackerel.
Yum.
How hungry are you? Here you go.
He was pretty hungry.
Yeah, he was hungry enough. We see that a starving Howard ate the original Mr. Tusk just an hour before he was rescued from the island, and he never forgave himself for that. He still regrets it. Howard continues to bring out the walrus in Wallace. Lapointe and Allie and Teddy find Wallace's car, so they're closing in. Howard gets into a walrus suit of his own and wants to fight with Mr. Tusk.
The two of them sort of bash heads back and forth because neither one of them have arms at that point.
Yeah, just flippers. Teddy and Allie hear the roars and break in. Either you go full walrus or you die, insists Howard. Well, Wallace does. Mr. Tusk uses his tusks to kill the crazy old man. Just as they come in. Yeah. Alice and Teddy find Wallace, but he can't talk. He can only roar. Lapointe comes in with his gun and takes aim. Well, 1 year later, Teddy and Allie go to an exotic animal zoo. They go to Wallace's enclosure. They bring him a fish, which he eats somewhat reluctantly as he sheds some tears.
I mean, it's a comedy movie. But everything
it's
is reasonably possible up until the end. Seriously, I mean, it's obviously he's not a real walrus. Why would they put him in a zoo?
And they wouldn't have tried to reverse some of this. And
yeah,
I mean, he'd live as a, and there's no way they could restore him to full functioning. But somewhat.
That's the only part of this
living
I don't believe.
As a person again. Yeah.
Well, Michael Parks, as Howard, is awesomely crazy.
Yes, he is.
Justin Long plays the same Weasley character he always plays, which is perfect here. Johnny Depp, well, he's unique. All the Canadian humor is a boot perfect as well. Canada is a weird and terrifying land full of lunatics, obviously. Well, the costume and makeup on the walrus is really cool, but it's just the entire ridiculous situation that makes this one so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hoot.
It is.
It's a boot to hoot.
It's a boot. A good movie.
Let's get us some Tim Hortons, eh?
Yeah.
All right. And then we have There's Something Wrong with the Children. Just came out 2023, so about as new as you can get.
Brand new.
Directed by Roxanne Benjamin. Written by TJ Simphil and David White. Stars Amanda Crew, Zach Gilford, Briella Guiza, and David Maddle. Hour and 32 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. What happens?
Well, the official release.
Oh, yeah.
I quote.
We always have one of these little official things when there's a giveaway.
Yeah, when there's a giveaway, they ask for this. A group of friends on a weekend cabin trip begin to suspect something supernatural is at play when the kids behave strangely after disappearing into the woods overnight. There's Something Wrong with the Children is the latest horror film from Blumhouse Productions. Blumhouse? Blumhouse.
I think it's Blum.
Blum. Available to buy or rent on digital now, and this film is not rated.
Yeah, it's run by Jason Blum, so it's
Blumhouse.
We enjoyed
this one. It's creepy and unsettling without everything being clearly explained, which worked just fine. And it builds steadily, with things just getting worse and worse.
Some movies explain every detail, and that's good sometimes, and sometimes it's too much detail. This one doesn't explain everything, and it's good because of it.
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, we watched Two Children. Again, I'm not going to spoil this completely because it's brand new and you probably haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
We watched Two Children, Lucy and Spencer, playing tag as the credits roll. The adults, Ellie, Thomas, Ben, and Margot, are all on vacation together with Thomas and Ellie's kids. There's a thunderstorm, and the two families split up for the evening to go to their neighboring cabins. The next morning, they all go hiking, and Ben gets them off trail into the woods. They soon come across a huge abandoned building, and they all decide to explore. Suddenly, the kids are gone, and the adults hear a scream. Nope, the kids just found a nest full of dead birds. Then they all come across a big, deep hole in the ground. Lucy and Spencer call it the place that shines, and both of them start pointing at it. Spencer then tries to jump in, but Thomas stops him. They all go back outside. This is like a bottomless pit.
Mm-hmm.
When they get back to their cabins, both kids take a nap, which is unusual. Ellie tells Margot about the four-way she and Thomas had with some friends that didn't go terribly well. Okay, that's what we talk about on camping. Ben and Thomas talk about why Ben doesn't want kids yet. Probably because there's these four-ways that don't go very well.
Well, that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Ben and Margot volunteer to take the kids for the night so that Thomas and Ellie can have some sexy time. But then the kids start acting weird before going to bed. Finally left alone, Ben and Margot talk about having children themselves. They don't really finish the conversation because she gets too high. We then see that he takes medication as well, and as we've said before, every time you see somebody taking medication in a movie, it's because they're probably schizophrenic.
It's going to come into play later.
We were right. Well, the next morning, Margot goes in to wake up the kids, and they're gone, along with their shoes. Ben goes back down that path looking for them, and he goes back into the weird old building and finds them there, standing over the pit again. The two kids jump into the bottomless pit. Back at the cabin, Margot reports that the kids are there. What?
And Ben sees them there, and Ben is mightily confused. And hilarity ensues from there, and we shouldn't see any more.
That's about right, yeah. Yeah, the kids are dead, but no, they're not.
And so Ben is,
Did Ben really see that?
Ben knows what he saw, and yet there they are.
But does Ben know what he saw?
But does Ben know what he saw? That's the question.
All right. Well, other people's kids are just weird, right?
Yep.
They're almost as bad as the parents in this one. The chittering between the kids, the repeated shots of the bug zapper, and Spencer talking about dead bugs all the time make it clear that the entities involved are somehow insect-related, but it's never quite clear how.
No, and that's okay.
The cinematography and soundtrack are especially noteworthy. The acting is fine. The kids are not bad actors, but it's a fairly by-the-numbers evil children storyline with a side helping of a guy on drugs who may or may not be hallucinating. It's well done. There's not a lot here you haven't seen before, but it's a fun watch, and we were entertained overall.
And shoot us a line if you'd like to get a free digital copy.
Email at horrorguys.com. Link in the show notes, link in the website, link just about everywhere that we've got stuff.
Mm-hmm. Here and there and everywhere.
And that's it for this week. Next week we'll have 4 more movies and a short, 2 on our bonus newsletter, horrorguys.com, and anything to add?
I don't think so.
Got that free giveaway movie?
We liked all 4 movies this week.
We did.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try and have some stinkers next week. Got to warn you about the stinkers.
Something we can rip on more next week.
Well, just the stuff we've watched recently that's probably going to show up next week. I don't think there's anything we really hated.
No, not yet. Yeah, we're on a good roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. You sound sad.
I like ripping them up once in a while.
Once in a while, maybe.
Okay, well, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.